The morning sun rose over the golden wheat fields of Haven's Rest colony. Danny Reeves wiped the sweat from his forehead and looked at the endless rows of crops that stretched toward the horizon. He had been a farmer for 20 years, and this was going to be his best harvest yet. The soil on this distant world was rich and kind, and the colonists had built a good life here, far from the crowded cities of Earth. Children played near the irrigation channels while their parents worked the fields. The sound of laughter mixed with the hum of farming machines. It was a peaceful morning, just like every other morning on this quiet agricultural colony. Nobody expected that peace to end. Danny noticed the shadow first. It moved across his field like a dark cloud, but there were no clouds in the sky. He looked up and felt his heart stop. A massive ship hung in the air above the colony, blocking out the sun. It was bigger than anything he had ever seen, and it was not human. More ships appeared. They descended from the sky like a swarm of metal insects, their hulls covered in strange symbols that no human could read. The children stopped playing. The farmers stopped working. Everyone stood frozen, staring at the impossible sight above them. The largest ship landed in the center of the colony, crushing the town square beneath its weight. A door opened, and creatures emerged. They were tall and thin, with pale blue skin and 4 arms. Their eyes were completely black, like pools of dark water. They wore armor that seemed to absorb light, and they carried weapons that hummed with deadly energy. Governor Mills walked toward the aliens with her hands raised in peace. She was a brave woman who had led this colony for 10 years. She believed in diplomacy. She believed that any intelligent species could find common ground through communication. The alien commander stepped forward. His name was Grand Admiral, though the humans did not know this yet. He looked at the governor with an expression that might have been amusement or contempt. It was hard to tell with alien faces. "We are the Empire," announced. His voice was cold and mechanical, translated through a device on his chest. "This world now belongs to us. Your species will serve or die." Governor Mills tried to speak. She tried to explain that humanity was peaceful, that they wanted only to farm and live in harmony. She tried to offer friendship and cooperation. Raised his weapon and fired. The governor fell to the ground and did not move again. The colonists screamed. Some ran. Some fell to their knees. The soldiers spread through the colony, herding humans like cattle, separating families, establishing control with brutal efficiency. In his farmhouse on the edge of the colony, heard the chaos. He was 58 years old, retired from the Earth Navy after 30 years of service. He had come to Haven's Rest to find peace, to grow vegetables and read books and forget about war. But war had found him. Moved quickly. He grabbed his old service pistol from a locked box under his bed. It was a simple weapon, outdated by military standards, but it still worked. He slipped out the back door and made his way through the wheat fields, staying low, staying quiet. He found other colonists hiding in the fields. Danny Reeves was there with his wife Maria. Dr. Laura had escaped from the medical center with a bag of supplies. Amy Grant, who taught history at the colony school, was trying to calm a group of frightened children. Tyler, a young mechanic barely out of his teenage years, clutched a wrench like it was a sword. "What do we do?" Danny asked. His voice was shaking. "They killed the governor. They killed her like it was nothing." Looked at the faces around him. These were not soldiers. They were farmers and teachers and doctors. They had never held weapons in anger. They had never seen death up close. But they were also humans, and humans had a long history of refusing to accept defeat. "Earth is 3 months away," said quietly. "Even if our distress signal reaches them today, no help is coming for a long time. We have 2 choices. We can surrender and hope they treat us well, or we can fight." "Fight?" Tyler laughed bitterly. "Fight with what? Farm tools, kitchen knives?" "If that is what we have, then yes," replied. "I am not asking you to win. I am asking you to resist. I am asking you to make them work for every inch of ground. I am asking you to show them that humans do not break easily." Amy Grant stepped forward. Her hands were still trembling, but her voice was steady. "I am not a soldier. None of us are, but I watched them murder Mills because she asked for peace. I would rather die fighting than live as a slave." One by one, the others nodded. Danny thought about his wheat fields that he might never harvest. Laura thought about the patients she had left behind in the medical center. Tyler thought about his mother back on Earth who would never know what happened to her son. But they all agreed they would fight. Began organizing them immediately. He divided them into small groups. He identified the terrain features they could use for cover. He asked Tyler about the farming equipment and whether any of it could be modified for combat. He asked Laura about biology and whether they had any weaknesses. He asked Amy to monitor enemy communications if she could find a way to access their frequencies. As night fell over Haven's Rest, they celebrated their easy conquest. Grand Admiral sent a message to the Emperor himself, reporting that the human colony had been secured with minimal resistance. He estimated that full pacification would take no more than one standard week. Did not know that in the darkness beyond his patrols, 6,000 ordinary humans were preparing to prove him wrong. They had no training, no weapons, no hope of rescue, but they had something they had never encountered before. They had the stubborn, unreasonable, magnificent refusal to surrender that had defined humanity, since the first humans stood against predators with nothing but rocks and fire. The war for Haven's Rest was about to begin, and the Empire had no idea what they had awakened. Sub-Commander stood in the command center and stared at the reports on his screen. Something was wrong. The numbers did not make sense. In the first week of occupation, they had lost 47 soldiers. 47 trained warriors with advanced weapons and superior technology, killed by farmers with primitive tools. It was impossible. It was humiliating, and it was getting worse. "Another patrol has gone missing," an officer reported. "Third Squad, Sector 7. They were investigating a damaged irrigation system." Closed his eyes. He knew what had happened. The same thing that kept happening every day and every night since the occupation began. The humans were hunting them. Outside the perimeter, Danny Reeves led his team through the wheat fields. The crops had grown tall enough to hide a standing man, and Danny knew every path, every ditch, every place where the ground was soft enough to muffle footsteps. This was his land. He had worked it for 20 years. Now he used that knowledge to kill. His weapon was a sharpened farming blade attached to a long pole. It was crude and ugly, but it worked. The armor had gaps at the joints, and Danny had learned exactly where to strike, quick and quiet. No witnesses, no survivors. Tyler had become something unexpected. The young mechanic who once fixed tractors and water pumps now spent his nights building weapons from spare parts. He had converted crop dusters into delivery systems for smoke and chemical irritants. He had rigged harvesting machines to move on their own, creating distractions and blocking roads. He had turned the colony's entire agricultural infrastructure into a weapon. His latest creation was simple but effective. He had modified the irrigation system to flood specific areas on command. When patrols entered those zones, the ground turned to mud. Their heavy armor made them sink. And while they struggled to free themselves, human fighters emerged from the wheat. Dr. Laura worked in a hidden hospital beneath an old storage building. She treated the wounded and saved lives with limited supplies and endless determination. But she also studied the enemy. She had examined bodies, analyzed their biology, and discovered something important. They had evolved on a sterile world. Their immune systems were weak compared to humans. Common bacteria that lived harmlessly on human skin could cause severe infections in tissue. Laura shared this information with, and he found ways to use it. Grand Admiral summoned to his private chamber. The Admiral was not pleased. "Explain to me," said coldly. how we are losing soldiers to creatures who fight with farming equipment. Chose his words carefully. The humans are using unconventional tactics. They do not engage us directly. They strike from hiding and disappear before we can respond. They use the terrain against us. They seem to know our patrol routes before we establish them. Then change the routes, burn the fields, eliminate their hiding places. We have tried. When we burn one field, they move to another. When we change routes, they adapt within hours. It is as if they can read our minds. Slammed his fist on the table. They are primitives. They have no technology, no training, no military structure. How are they doing this? Had no answer. He did not understand it himself. Every tactical model said the humans should have surrendered by now. Every psychological profile said they should be broken and compliant. Instead, they fought harder every day. Amy Grant was the reason the humans always seemed one step ahead. She had found a way to tap into communication frequencies using equipment from the colony school. The aliens used complex encryption, but Amy was patient. She spent hours listening, learning their language, understanding their patterns. Now she could predict their movements before they made them. She sat in a dark basement, headphones pressed to her ears, writing notes by candlelight. They were planning a major operation for tomorrow. They intended to sweep the eastern farmlands with overwhelming force. Amy smiled grimly and began writing the warning that would save dozens of human lives. 2 weeks into the occupation, they controlled less territory than they had on the first day. Their soldiers refused to patrol alone. Their officers slept with weapons in their hands. The fear was spreading. Intelligence officer presented his findings too. He had analyzed every piece of data they had collected about the human resistance. I have identified the fighters, said. They are not soldiers. Frowned, what do you mean? I mean they have no military training. Their records show their occupations before the invasion. They were farmers, teachers, medical workers, mechanics. The man leading their forces is a retired officer who has not served in 30 years. The rest are ordinary civilians. Stared at him. That is impossible. Civilians do not fight like this. And yet they do. Pulled up more data. Furthermore, they are learning at an extraordinary rate. Tactics that defeated us last week no longer work. They adapt faster than our soldiers can respond. They are innovating in real time. Was silent for a long moment. For the first time since the invasion began, he felt something he had not expected to feel: doubt. That night gathered his fighters for a special operation. They were going to attack the command post, not to destroy it, but to send a message, to show the aliens that nowhere was safe. The attack was chaos by design. Tyler's machines created diversions. Danny's team struck from multiple directions. Amy fed them real-time updates on enemy positions. Laura had prepared a biological surprise that would leave every survivor scratching infected wounds for weeks. The assault failed militarily. They drove them back with heavy fire, but did not care about military victory. He cared about psychological impact. When emerged from his bunker the next morning, he found human footprints on the steps of his command center. Someone had walked right up to his door while he slept. They had left a message carved into the metal. It said simply, "We are still here." Looked at those words and felt something cold settle in his stomach. He had conquered 100 worlds for the Empire. He had crushed rebellions and ended civilizations. But he had never faced an enemy like this. He had never faced humans. 6 weeks had passed since the invasion. They had brought 3 times their original forces to Haven's Rest. They had burned fields, destroyed buildings, and executed prisoners. They had used every tactic that had worked on 100 other worlds. None of it mattered. The humans were still fighting. Grand Admiral stood before a holographic map of the colony. Red zones marked areas under control. Blue zones marked areas of active resistance. 6 weeks ago, the map had been almost entirely red. Now the blue was spreading like a disease. "How many soldiers have we lost?" asked quietly. Checked his records. 15,412 confirmed dead. Another 3,000 wounded severely enough to require evacuation. Approximately 2,000 missing, presumed dead. 20,000 casualties against farmers. Intelligence officer had been working without sleep for days. He had analyzed every scrap of data, every intercepted communication, every survivor report. He had built a complete picture of the human resistance, and what he found terrified him. "I need to show you something," told. He activated a display that showed images of human fighters, ordinary faces, tired eyes, improvised weapons. "These are the people we have been fighting. This man was a wheat farmer. This woman taught children to read. This young one repaired machines. None of them had ever killed before we arrived." Study the images. Your point. My point is that we are not fighting an army. We are fighting a community. Every time we kill one of them, their friends and families become more determined. Every atrocity we commit creates 10 new fighters. We cannot break them because we do not understand what holds them together. And what holds them together? Paused. Each other. They fight for each other. They die for each other. They have bonds that we do not have words to describe. It is not loyalty to a government or fear of punishment. It is something deeper. Dismissed this with a wave of his hand. Sentiment, emotion, weakness. With respect, Admiral, it is not weakness. It is the source of their strength, and we have no counter for it. Had not slept more than 3 hours at a time since the invasion began. His body ached. His mind was exhausted. But every time he thought about giving up, he looked at the people around him. Danny and Maria Reeves, still fighting despite losing their home. Tyler, who had grown from a scared boy into a capable warrior. Amy Grant, whose intelligence work had saved countless lives. Laura, who healed the wounded with nothing but skill and determination. These people trusted him. They followed him into darkness because they believed he could lead them to light, could not let them down. He planned a major operation. It was risky, perhaps foolish, but it would show that the resistance was not fatting. They would strike at the main supply depot, destroying fuel and ammunition that the enemy desperately needed. The attack began at midnight. Human fighters moved through drainage tunnels that they did not know existed. Tyler had mapped the entire underground network, every pipe and channel that crisscrossed beneath the colony. The aliens had superior technology, but they did not know the land. The humans knew every stone, every shadow, every secret path. Amy guided them by radio, her voice calm and steady as she tracked enemy positions. Danny led the assault team, his farmers-turned-fighters moving with practiced coordination. Laura waited at the extraction point with medical supplies ready. The explosions lit up the night. Fuel tanks erupted in columns of fire. Ammunition stores detonated in chains of thunder. Soldiers ran in confusion, unable to find targets, unable to stop the destruction. When dawn came, the supply depot was a smoking ruin. They had lost enough resources to cripple their operations for weeks, and the humans had vanished like ghosts. Allowed himself a small smile. It was not victory. They were still outnumbered, still waiting for help that might never come. But they had hurt the enemy. They had proven that resistance was possible. Amy intercepted a priority transmission that afternoon. Earth had received their distress signal. Help was coming. But the details of what she heard made her pause, then laugh, then cry. She found in his hidden command post. Her face was strange, caught between joy and disbelief. "I made contact with Earth," she said. "The fleet is mobilizing." Nodded. "How long until they arrive?" 3 weeks, maybe 4. Amy handed him a data pad. "But that is not the important part. I heard the response from Earth Command. I know what they are sending." Read the data. He read it again. Then he sat down heavily, his aged legs suddenly weak. "This cannot be right," he whispered. It is right, I confirmed it twice. Amy knelt beside him. We have been fighting for 6 weeks. We have lost friends. We have suffered and bled and almost died 100 times. And this entire time we thought we were alone. We are alone. No military forces were stationed in this sector. Exactly. Amy's voice trembled with emotion. We are not soldiers. We never were. We are farmers and teachers and doctors. And we have held off the Empire with nothing but courage and farming tools. Understood what she was saying. The help coming from Earth was not just a rescue mission. It was the actual military, the real army, trained soldiers with advanced weapons and warships designed for combat. What they had faced so far was not humanity's strength. It was humanity's weakness. The people the Empire had been fighting for 6 weeks were civilians, volunteers, ordinary men and women who simply refused to surrender. And now the real army was coming. Started laughing. He could not help it. The absurdity of the situation, the irony, the beautiful, terrible truth of what they had accomplished. 6,000 farmers had fought the Empire to a standstill. We need to tell them, said finally, the need to know what is coming. Amy nodded, her eyes bright with fierce satisfaction. I think I know exactly how to deliver that message. The ship appeared at the edge of the system without warning. It was small, barely larger than a shuttle, and it broadcast no weapon signatures. Sensors identified it as a diplomatic courier vessel bearing human markings. Grand Admiral received the report with suspicion. One ship. After 2 months of silence, Earth sends one ship. It is requesting permission to deliver a message, reported. The pilot claims to speak for Earth's government. Considered his options. He had been waiting for this moment. Earth would surely want to negotiate for the return of their colonists. They would offer tribute, perhaps territory, in exchange for peace. The Empire had done this many times. Weaker species always sought terms when they realized resistance was futile. Allow them to approach, commanded. I will hear their surrender. The courier ship landed in the same square where Governor Mills had died 2 months earlier. A single human emerged, a young officer in a crisp uniform. He carried a data case and nothing else. Soldiers surrounded him immediately, weapons ready. The officer walked calmly through the ruins of the colony. He saw the burned buildings, the scattered debris, the evidence of destruction everywhere. His expression did not change. Met him in the command center. The admiral sat on an elevated platform, looking down at the human with undisguised contempt. Around him stood his senior officers, including I am Grand Admiral of the Empire, he announced. You will address me with proper respect. The human officer nodded politely. I am Lieutenant Commander Bailey, diplomatic to Fleet Admiral Cole. I carry a message from Earth Command. Your government wishes to negotiate surrender, said confidently. I expected this. Your colonists have suffered enough. Tell your leaders that the Empire is prepared to be merciful, provided Earth accepts our terms. Bailey's expression flickered just for a moment. Something that might have been amusement crossed his face. Admiral, I think there has been a misunderstanding. I am not here to negotiate our surrender. Frowned, then why are you here? I am here to deliver a transmission from Fleet Admiral Cole. She wishes to speak with you directly. The data case contained equipment for a real-time communication link. Bailey set it up with practiced efficiency, connecting to a relay network that bounced the signal across light-years of space. Within minutes, a holographic image materialized in the center of the command room. The woman who appeared was older than Bailey, with hair cut short and eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. She wore the uniform of Earth's combined military forces, decorated with medals and insignia that marked her as the highest-ranking officer in humanity's armed services. Grand Admiral, she said calmly, I am Fleet Admiral Cole. Thank you for receiving this communication. Straightened in his seat, Admiral Cole, I assume you wish to discuss the terms of your colony's surrender." "Not quite." Cole's voice carried no anger, no fear, no desperation. She spoke like someone reading a weather report. "I wish to thank you for your patience over these past 2 months. We apologize for the delay in our response. Mobilizing our forces required time." "Mobilizing?" laughed. "What forces? We have encountered nothing but farmers with primitive weapons." "Yes," Cole nodded. "That is precisely what I wanted to discuss with you." She pressed something outside the frame, and data began streaming to the command center's screens. "Please review this information at your convenience." Was the first to access the data. His face went pale. "Admiral," he whispered, "you need to see this." The screens filled with numbers, images, specifications. Earth's military structure laid bare. 400 million active military personnel. 12 main battle fleets, each containing hundreds of warships. Training programs that began in childhood. Weapons systems that rivaled anything the possessed. "This is a lie," said, but his voice wavered. "Propaganda designed to frighten us." "It is entirely accurate," Cole replied. "Our military has existed for centuries. We have fought wars among ourselves that killed hundreds of millions. We have developed weapons capable of destroying entire planets. We have trained generation after generation in the art of warfare." She paused. "Grand Admiral, humanity is very, very good at fighting." Was studying the fleet positions. "Admiral, if this data is correct, an Earth battle group is currently 3 weeks from this system. Approximately 200 warships carrying 50 million soldiers." Felt cold. 50 million. "That is just the initial response force," Cole continued. "If necessary, we can deploy much larger numbers, but I do not think that will be required." Her eyes locked onto through the holographic link. "Do you know what has confused me most about this situation, Admiral?" Did not respond. "You invaded a farming colony. There was no military presence in this sector. No defense forces, no warships, no trained soldiers. The people on Haven's Rest were civilians. Farmers, teachers, doctors, mechanics." Cole leaned forward slightly. "They had no weapons, no training, no experience with combat. They were the people we send to colonize new worlds because they are peaceful. They have killed 20,000 of my soldiers," said through gritted teeth. "Yes, they have." Cole's voice hardened for the first time. "And they did it with farming tools and courage. They did it because they refused to surrender. They did it because that is what humans do when someone threatens their homes and families." She stood up, her full height now visible in the hologram. "Admiral, the people you have been fighting for 2 months are not our army. They are not our warriors. They are our farmers, our teachers, our healers. They are the people we protect. They are the reason we have a military in the first place." The command room was silent. Every officer stared at the screens, at the data, at the impossible truth that was unfolding before them. "The real army has not even arrived yet," Cole said quietly. "But it is coming. 200 warships, 50 million soldiers who have trained their entire lives for exactly this situation. They are not farmers, Admiral. They are professionals." She gave a moment to absorb this. Then she delivered the final blow. "You have 3 weeks to withdraw from Haven's Rest. If you are still there when my fleet arrives, we will not negotiate. We will not accept surrender. We will demonstrate what happens when humanity goes to war." The transmission ended. The hologram faded. The command room remained frozen in shocked silence. Was the first to speak. "Admiral, we need to leave, immediately." Did not respond. He was staring at the empty space where Cole's image had been, his mind struggling to process what he had just learned. Farmers, he had been fighting farmers for 2 months, and they had nearly beaten him. What would happen when he faced the real army? The evacuation began within hours of Admiral Cole's transmission. Grand Admiral had wanted to stay to fight, to prove that his empire was not afraid of human threats. But intelligence officer had shown him the calculations. Their remaining forces could not withstand the approaching fleet. Retreat was not cowardice, it was survival. Shuttles rose from the colony in waves, carrying soldiers and equipment back to the orbiting warships. They moved quickly, abandoning positions they had fought to capture, leaving behind damaged vehicles they could not repair in time. After 2 months of brutal occupation, they were running. Watch from a hilltop as the enemy fled. Danny Reeves stood beside him, along with Tyler and Amy Grant and Laura. The core of the resistance, the people who had held the line when holding, seemed impossible. "They are actually leaving," Tyler said softly. He sounded like he did not believe it. "They received the message," Amy replied. "I monitored their communications after the transmission. Complete panic. Their officers are arguing about who will be blamed for this disaster." Danny shook his head slowly. 2 months. We fought them for 2 months with shovels and hunting rifles, and they are running from us. "They are not running from us," corrected. He pointed at the sky where the first stars of evening were appearing. "They are running from what is coming." Sub-Commander found them an hour later. He approached under a white flag, walking alone through the ruined farmland with his hands visible and empty. The human guards tracked him with their weapons but did not fire, had ordered them to hold. Stop 10 meters from the hilltop. His 4 arms hung at his sides and his black eyes reflected the fading light. He looked exhausted, defeated, confused. "I asked to speak with your commander before we leave," said. "Grand Admiral refused me permission, but I came anyway. I need to understand." "Walk down to meet him. Understand what?" "How?" The single word carried immense weight. "How did you do this? Our tactical models said you would surrender within days. Our psychological profiles said humans break under sufficient pressure. Everything we knew about conquest and occupation said this should have been easy." Spread his hands in a gesture of helplessness. "But you did not break. You fought harder. Every time we pushed, you pushed back. Every time we thought we had won, you proved us wrong." Considered the question carefully. He thought about the people he had led, the sacrifices they had made, the impossible odds they had faced. "We were not fighting for territory," said finally. "We were not fighting for resources or power or glory. We were fighting for our homes, for our families, for each other." He gestured at the ruined colony around them. "You see this destruction and think you caused damage. We see this destruction and remember what we are protecting. Every burned field reminds us what we could lose. Every fallen friend reminds us why we cannot stop." Was silent for a long moment. "Your species is very strange." "Perhaps, but we are also very stubborn." Extended his hand in the human gesture of respect. "Go back to your empire, Sub-Commander. Tell them what you learned here. Tell them that humans are not an easy conquest. Tell them that we protect our own." Looked at the offered hand but did not take it. Perhaps his culture did not have such gestures, or perhaps he simply did not know how to respond. He nodded once, turned, and walked back toward the waiting shuttles. The last ship left orbit the following morning. The sky was clear for the first time in 2 months, empty of alien vessels, empty of the shadow that had hung over Haven's Rest since the invasion began. The colonists emerged from hiding slowly, carefully, still not quite believing it was over. They gathered in the ruined town square where Governor Mills had died, where this nightmare had started. Some wept, some laughed. Most simply stood in silence, looking at each other, remembering those who were not there to see this moment. The human fleet arrived 19 days later. 200 warships dropped out of faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming with weapons that could crack planets. Behind them came support vessels, hospital ships, construction platforms, everything needed to rebuild what had been destroyed. Fleet Admiral Cole landed personally. She was smaller than had expected, a compact woman with iron hair and a face that had seen too much. She walked through the ruins of Haven's Rest without speaking, taking in the evidence of battle, the makeshift fortifications, the improvised weapons. She found waiting in what remained of the colony administration building. He stood at attention despite his exhausted body, the old military habits returning even after 30 years. Cole studied him for a long moment, then she saluted. "Commander," she said formally, "on behalf of Earth and humanity, I am here to recognize your service. You and your volunteers held this colony against overwhelming odds for 2 months. You faced a superior enemy with inferior equipment and won. You reminded the galaxy what humans are capable of." Returned the salute. "We did what was necessary, Admiral, nothing more." "You did something extraordinary." Cole turned to address the crowd that had gathered behind her. Farmers, teachers, doctors, mechanics, ordinary people who had become warriors. "You showed the Empire that humanity cannot be conquered. You showed them that our strength does not come from our weapons or our technology. It comes from our hearts." The ceremony was brief but meaningful. Medals were awarded. Names were read aloud, including the names of those who had died. Stories were shared of courage and sacrifice and stubborn human defiance. When it was over, Danny Reeves returned to his fields. The wheat was gone, burned or trampled or simply dead from neglect. But the soil remained. Tyler had already begun repairing the irrigation systems, and supply ships had brought seeds from Earth. Maria walked beside him, her hand in his. "We will have to start over," she said. Danny looked at the empty fields, then at the clear sky above them. "That is what humans do. We get knocked down and we stand up again. We lose everything and we rebuild. It is who we are." Amy Grant's voice crackled over the colony radio network. She had resumed her old job, but now instead of teaching history, she was making it. The first harvest festival since liberation would be held in 3 months. Everyone was invited. Found a quiet spot at the edge of the colony, away from the celebrations and the construction and the noise of renewal. He sat on a fallen log and looked at the stars. Somewhere out there, the Empire was learning a hard lesson. Their intelligence reports were being rewritten. Their tactical models were being revised. And in the halls of imperial power, admirals and generals were asking themselves a troubling question. If farmers could fight like that, what would happen if they faced the real army? Smiled, he hoped they never had to find out. But if they did, humanity would be ready. "We always are,"